Welcome to another courageous conversation on a topic which is taboo to most people. But yet I feel it's a topic that has to be discussed, not just discussed, but discussed threadbare, which is what we want to do in this conversation. And the topic is suicide. And I'm hemmed in between two wonderful people. I actually like being hemmed in between them. On the one hand is a leader, a very reputed leader, a former CEO. And he's so gracious. Peter Samuel is so gracious to be willing to share his own personal story of suicide. And thank you very much. And even as he shares, we're going to take each of those aspects and just throw it across the table like a ping pong table to a counselor, Santhosh. And Santhosh is willing, having been aware of many such similar stories as a counselor, he's willing to just discuss the nuances here and take us through that. So we're in for a very interesting session. So we'll dive right into it, Peter. I know it's long time back, but it still might be traumatic to think of it. How did this whole start? I mean, there's always a journey which leads on that perilous path of suicide. Where did your journey start?
My journey, I think, started when I slowly got into addictions at a very early age.
How early?
Early, I got addicted in my teens and 20s.
Okay.
Yeah, but got into smoking and drinking when I was in my 7th and 8th standard.
Wow.
A lot of people think that, if you have good upbringing, good environment, you generally don't tend to, get into this kind of habits. But my case was different. I had the best of the upbringing, wonderful family, but yet I kind of broke that barrier in that sense, and I got into all of this. But the problem is when I went to do my MBA, that is when I think the kind of group that I got associated with and is broadly to do with no purpose.
Okay.
I think for me it is just live for that one day, get high and don't bother about anything else. So when you don't have any purpose and you just want to do what you feel like doing, that is where it started off, and I got into alcoholism, and for 2 years I was onto drugs as well.
Wow. And I just want to know a sense of it. Sorry if it makes you squirm, but I'm sure there's a great conclusion to the story. But I want to get a sense of how deep were you into addiction?
Yeah, I was having alcohol every day.
Wow.
Pretty much every day.
And you're not talking about cough mixture, real alcohol.
Yeah.
Okay.
Real alcohol. Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much every day.
Wow.
So that went on for almost 2 years before I quit. I've been drinking for a long time, but yes.
And I'm very curious, especially when you said 7th standard, where do you get the means to finance this? But we'll come to that. That's the next phase. But we'll move over to the counselor. Addiction, 7th grade. Are you surprised, by the way?
No, 90% of my young adult addict clients started at the average age of 13.
Average age of
pretty much, yeah. I was
pretty much the same. So, okay. So he's a typical client.
Yeah.
Okay. But back then I didn't have Santhosh to reach out to. That was the problem.
Yeah. But the scourge of addiction, it's a grim reality, right? Parents turn a blind eye to it, but kids of that age also, is it a reality, and what do you think can be done about it?
It is. Most of it starts with school and friends, because that's where they have easy access to it. Probably peer pressure gets to it on the field, in the classroom, wherever you go. And it doesn't take much for an immature body and mind to get addicted almost immediately, because you feel good, you feel better because your friends approve of it and everything has to going for it. And of course, the teenage rebellion against your parents. If they don't like it, you're going to do it.
Yeah. I just want to, horrified by a word you just used, easy access. Sometime back, there was a newspaper report that the drug peddlers are right there at the school premises. How real is that?
That's the epitome of marketing strategy. These guys go to the clients. Wow. So the clients don't have to go in search of what they want. And if schools and colleges is where the clients are, then they'll make sure that they will have easy access to it. So it could be the Pandaba guy, it could be an older senior student in the school, someone in the hostel or somebody close by who's selling it. And I mean, one can buy and the 5 of us can share it in the class.
Sure. When I next come back to you, I'll ask you about the life cycle of an addict.
Right.
How it starts, how it is sustained, and how it ends. But we'll come back to you. So you're giving a picture that it was progressively getting worse.
Yes.
It kind of reached a crescendo in your MBA days.
Yes.
But friends, I was curious. So I feel an addict is one who's so hung on to it that even when they're alone without friends, they need it. They need that fix.
Yeah.
So how did it progress for you?
Yeah, for me, yeah. Well, whether I had company or not, I wanted it. That's
Okay.
it. But, as Santhosh was mentioning, the birds of the same feather flock together. So I found 2 or 3 others who were into, drugs and alcohol. So we all came together and
Okay. They were your spirit-filled friends in the... Okay. Okay. Fine. And then how did it progress from there? Yeah.
From there, I finished on my MBA with this kind of, habits. And I got into a job. When I look back, I still think, how did I...
You must have been exceptionally talented. Yes.
I'm not sure. So probably the gift of gab is what helped me.
Okay.
All said and done, I got into a decent job as my first break back in the year 1990. But then because of this addiction, the way it progressed was not right. Because you were mentioning about access to money. Yeah, during my childhood, it was going to the Kirana store and, buying vegetables and maybe once a week, meat and things like that. So I always used to round off. If I spent 56 rupees, I always said probably 60 rupees or 70 rupees. So my dad never really asked the breakup. I was happy.
Okay.
So the remaining money is what I siphoned off to kind of use it. That's how it started. But that small habit of, that's also stealing, right?
Yes,
To be very honest.
True.
All I said my dad is, this is what I paid to get this.
It's both, in a sense, I'm sorry for saying, but both lying and stealing.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely. But I never had any guilt, nothing at all. And when I got into this job, obviously, I wanted to have more. And then I found ways to, misappropriate and misuse my power, and actually ended up in a fraud.
You mean to say your regular means of income was not enough to sustain your habit?
Absolutely. No, it was not.
Okay.
When you want to drink almost twice or thrice a week, it's just not going to...
What Peter's talking about, Pramod, is what we technically call tolerance. Anybody who's had their first peg, first smoke, will remember how they felt. But a week later, a month later, it won't have the same effect. So you need more of the same thing or something stronger, something better. Because you're bored and this does not excite you anymore. So one peg will lead you to 2, to lead you to 1.25 and a full bottle of getting drunk. Then you say, no, this is not doing. So let me do some weed, let me do some drugs. So your body gets tolerant to the substance that you are consuming and wants more. And this is a constant with all kinds of addictions, be it substance abuse or behavioral addictions.
What you're saying is there's both a physiological and a psychological addiction.
Yes.
That is complete.
Yes.
That's when it affects you. So when you say misappropriate, again, I love these facts and figures. But to what extent were you and I know I really appreciate you for talking about it. It takes great courage. And this is a courageous conversation, but to what extent?
Initially, it started off back in the year 1991. I first misappropriated 1 lakh rupees. That means I put up fake papers to withdraw
Okay.
1 lakh of rupees.
Okay.
Typically, a false loan.
Yeah.
I know.
But you always had the intention of probably... repaying it.
Intention was to pay off.
Yes.
There is this, the good side, the good upbringing is always there, doing all the bad things. But somewhere, if at all you call it integrity, no ways it will qualify for integrity. But then, with an intention to pay back. So paying back was 1,000 rupees per month. So you have 1 lakh rupees at hand. You're not investing. Supposing I've invested it somewhere, probably I would have paid.
Correct.
And then suddenly I get transferred, from Hyderabad office to Bangalore.
Okay.
Now I had one more partner in crime. There'll always be somebody.
Okay.
So I asked that guy to manage here. And then in Bangalore, slowly after I settled down there, I again taken another lakh and slowly started paying here. And you're not investing anywhere. So money will just go away.
Yeah.
Then the next year, another lakh. So finally, it was 4 lakh rupees over 3 years.
Wow.
I'm talking of 1991 to 1993 end. And that's a lot of money back then and even now.
So on top of the addiction, you added, unwittingly, you added financial stress.
Yes. Because, I just got caught up, this whole stress of how am I going to pay. And I'm not doing anything about it. I'm only finding ways to, take out more money to pay back. But then I just got caught up.
It's like getting deeper into the spider's web.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So sad. Financial aspect. I believe it is the number one cause of suicide. We hear it so distressingly in the papers every now and then.
Yes, financial stress is number one. Number two is relationships. But if you look at across the demographics in India, urban, employed, or be it a rural farmer, if they are lacking in finances and if they have slipped deep into debt from which at least they think there's no coming back, they figure the best thing is just to abandon all responsibility and end their lives. They won't be responsible. And with a blind hope that the family will be let off on compassionate grounds, which for most parts doesn't happen.
I'm just trying to put myself in your position. What a tough situation it is. I mean, you are getting you need the fix, your daily dose, and then you have run up a huge amount of debts. For those few momentary moments after you have your fix, maybe you forget about it, but it comes back even heavier to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. It was just temporary, but
It was, So it's kind of putting yourself more and more into a burden.
Yes.
I'm coming to the second point. He said number one is finance for people to commit suicide. Number two is relationships. So I'm just wondering, I mean, in 7th standard, it was not a huge thing, but still you managed to keep it secret from the family the whole time.
yeah, by the 12th standard, my dad came to know about my habits. But then later on, when I moved on to another city to do my graduation, and when I went on to do my post-graduation, he probably felt that I kind of came out of this, or he never knew that I've gotten into severe addiction. Yeah. So,
But still, as you got deeper and deeper into it, and then you're getting into debt also, there must have been some amount of fracture in the relationships, right?
yeah.
At home. I mean, you're not being your genuine self in front of your parents who loved you so much.
Yes. Whenever I came home, since I was always away, whenever I came home, I kind of managed to kind of stay away. It was not easy, but I used to come late night and things like that. Yeah, but
Okay.
the relationships got strained. Yes. And right at the beginning, Santhosh was also mentioning the reasons. One was, the attitude to kind of rebel against your parents. So I fall into that category. I did all of this to actually, because I was brought up in a very nice environment, but I felt caged from all sides.
True.
When friends of my age were going and watching movies, normal, regular movies, I was not even allowed to go and watch a movie. So that's where it triggered. So
Got it.
I just used to go away and just to watch a movie. And then from there, you pick up these things. It was more about, because the more they were saying no, I wanted to, do something just to.
Correct.
Yeah. So,
Santhosh, have you ever come across people like that? For me also, I can identify with him. I was not an addict. But it was a strange feeling because my parents were role models in society. And I loved them. At the same time, I resented that kind of expectation that was thrust on me.
Yes, I've met a lot of them. Again, there was a season when I was getting young adult addicts for about 6 months. I kept seeing one every 2 weeks, and they would come in. Most of them had parents who were serving society in some form or the other, community or the church or something like that. And because they were in those responsible positions, the expectations on their children were automatically high. But what the parents didn't seem to realize is they got there in their adult life. So you can't expect your child to live up to your levels when the child is some 25, 30 years younger to you and has a long way to learn. And in fact, one of my clients, was 19, he said to my face, I'm doing this just to hurt my father because he doesn't respect me at all. So I get no joy in this addiction. If I want to, I can stop today. I'm not stopping because I know that when I do this, I'm hurting him. The day he respects me as a person, ask him to just say that. And if I see that even for one day, I will stop then and there, is what the child
Grim
said.
but twisted psychology it is, but that's the reality. Now let's move further, closer to the climax. I mean, we know that ultimately there was a moment when you thought of ending your life. So can you just lead us up to that moment?
Yeah, as I said, end of 1993, for those 3 years, I kind of ended up in this 4 lakh rupees debt. And obviously, I tried my ways and means to cover this up, but I was not paying that money back to the organization by way of installments. And the whole thing blew up in the beginning of 1994. So my dad was called to the corporate office. And I still wonder, why was I not arrested that day? Because it was a crime, and immediate arrest was what anybody would do. I find it as divine intervention now, but then I was not, I was not following God in that sense back then. So my father comes to the corporate office. He's a retired teacher and a pastor. And with folded hands, he says that I will pay this money, just leave my son. He didn't have any, he didn't have any money, literally. And the head of the organization just said, okay, you take your son and go. They placed me on suspension. And then he brought me back home. And I'm just going down my memory as you're asking these questions. My dad struggled to understand how I could spend 4 lakhs in 2 years, because he was never into any of these habits like alcohol.
Correct.
Like he said, what is the cost of a bottle? How much do you drink? And back then it was 30 rupees, 40 rupees. He said lakhs of rupees. He never believed. He felt probably I was into gambling, I was into horse racing and things. You are hiding, something. I said, no. He said, can you just, kind of write and say per day how much are you spent? But irrespective of whatever we did, it didn't total up to 4 lakhs, to be very honest.
Yeah. You literally didn't know where the money
went. But I know it, that it went only to buy liquor. It was not just me, it was others and all.
Yeah.
But on the hindsight, so the whole thing blew up, and obviously it was a big shocker for my dad and the family. And after 3 months of this episode, when the whole thing blew up, and I was just at home, and slowly, following him to the cottage prayers that he was addressing and things like that. And I got to, know God as my Lord and Savior in that sense. Then all of a sudden, one day when I took him to the hospital for his regular treatment, the massive heart attack, and he just passes away before my eyes. It just happened.
It happened about 3 months after this.
3 months after this. It happened we came back in January of 1994, April of 1994. And that is where, it was a sudden death, and he was the head of the family. We all looked up to him, and I being the eldest in my family, I'm into this kind of mess. Nobody knew about the financial problems that our family was into, except 1 or 2, uncles and aunts of mine. And on the day of his burial, that is when I because there were people obviously who were close to dad who kind of pointed fingers to me and they said, "You are responsible for your dad's death. And why are you alive?" I mean, I'm not telling that was the reason for me to think, but then the very fact that, I made a mess out of myself and lost my dad and all of that hit me at one go. And then I thought, after the funeral, that day I'm going to end my life. Yeah.
And you actually went forward to do
No, I was wanting to, and
very serious about it.
Yes, absolutely. And again, divine intervention. While there were people, not many, but one or two who told this that I was responsible why I'm alive. There was a man of God. There were a couple of them who came for the funeral. There was one person who gave me this booklet, Our Daily Bread. Now it is a yearly, devotional.
But it used to be a
But
month.
back then, once in 3
3
months.
months.
Yeah, I
Quarter.
still have that copy with me. Wish I got it here. So obviously it was printed a couple of months or maybe a year back. And he places that booklet in my hand and he says, "Peter, the mantle has fallen on you. Go back and read what is written here and open the Bible and read." So after the funeral, came back home and with these thoughts of, ending my life and all of that, I took the courage of, opening that page.
Takes courage.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
Yeah. And the title was Moses is Dead. And it was Joshua chapter 1, the first 9 verses. And obviously, it talks about, as I was with Moses, I will be with you. Be of good courage and, take these people across the Jordan. So that divine intervention helped me get over the, suicidal thoughts.
Thought.
Yeah. But then I didn't change overnight in that sense.
Absolutely.
But from then, it was a journey.
But you changed your direction.
Yes. Yeah. For me to realize that I had to step in and doing what I'm doing now, it took me more than a year from that intervention that day.
Wonderful. So realistic. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing this. Santhosh, guilt. Okay. Guilt can take you in 2 different paths.
Yes.
Can either take you into a negative spiral, or it can take you, if you work on it the right way, into a positive spiral.
Right.
Okay. And do you have cases like that where people are handling guilt, and guilt is the one which is right there in front of them?
Right. Unfortunately, in India, our culture, like many other, should I say, Eastern cultures, is built on shame and guilt. So the minute something goes wrong, we don't look at the practical aspects of what happened, why it happened, what can we do. We immediately start by shaming people, pointing fingers at them and letting them know they're guilty, which means we do that with ourselves as well. So, irrespective of what, in Peter's case, it had his habit and his death had anything to do with his father's demise or not, people will immediately say, "Is you.
Correct.
You must have done something. Because if we know this much about you, God knows what else is happening at home and how much your father was carrying. So you contributed, you did this." And they don't have to say anything, Pramod. Just the looks they give you.
That's enough.
It's enough.
It's like daggers.
Yes, and they make you feel so shameful about yourself and guilt. Now, like you said, do I take that guilt and say, well, I accept I am wrong here and I'm guilty of this. So what can I do to better the situation? Or do I drown in my own guilt and try to forget it, which will further take me into my addiction, my habit, whatever I'm doing to actually get here and continue doing that so that I don't have to talk to these people. I'll just get drunk and sleep, or I'll just overdose and try to die. And these are the thought processes. So guilt can take you spiraling down that way where it gets even more difficult to get out. But if you accept saying, yes, I am guilty, but that's until today, and I accept that. And now I take responsibility for the change. And if you notice in Peter's case, he said it was lack of purpose. He said, I had nothing to do, just get drunk, roam around with friends, and do whatever I wanted to do. And the turning point that actually made him sit down, think for that year before deciding what to do is because now he saw purpose. And whoever gave him that daily bread literature obviously pointed saying, well, here is a purpose worth picking up, following, and fulfilling.
What a magnificent gesture that person.
Absolutely. And then the timing, it's absolute kairos. It has to be God's timing that at that moment someone comes and pointing. Now that was the beginning. But the choice always was with Peter. Does he pick up the mantle? Does he make the choice saying it's going to be difficult? People are going to laugh at me if I say I'm going to continue dad's work. Say, you of all people. Right? I'm sure there are other siblings, somebody in your family going to do a better job. You'll need at least 10 years just to wash off your current sins. That's what people do. But for him to say, it's okay.
Correct.
And give it some thought and find purpose there. One of the sources of crisis in our lives is existential crisis. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. No one loves me. My spouse doesn't love me. I don't have a purpose at all. So what do I do? Let me see how I can waste my life away.
Wow. Wonderful.
So purpose gives you focus. Purpose helps you come out of the deepest pits, focus all your energies and achieve what God set out to be your purpose in life.
So beautiful. I'll let you have the last word. Okay. Peter Samuel, such a reputed leader, the valley which you traversed, and that beautiful day of intense tragedy was also a beautiful day of celebration because you met the person who's a giver of life at the crossroads of life. So I'll let you have the closing remarks and just wrap up your story in a manner that will inspire people who are looking and listening to this.
Yeah, well, it looks like Santhosh knew me inside out. The way he told, it was not easy, especially for people who've been with my dad to accept me. Same thing, I mean, how do you expect a drunkard who's messed up his life to, stand up and, just start preaching and things like that? I didn't do that. Obviously, it took me a lot of time. But then I just want to tell one or two things that helped me big time is when this whole thing blew up and when my dad brought me back, apart from, leading me to the Lord and, helping me, he told one thing, because at that point in time, I told my dad, I'm going to serve the Lord. He laughed at me, literally. He said, why do you want to serve the Lord? You've lost your job. You are in suspension. Nobody will give you a job. Just because, your conduct is gone and you don't have anything else to do, say, I'll come and serve the Lord. But the Lord also doesn't want such people. This is what my dad told me. He said, first prove to this world that you have genuinely changed, that you are honest, you're a person of integrity. Earn in a proper manner, even if it's 100 rupees. And later on, when God calls you, then you serve the Lord. This is what stayed with me. And after that, intervention and I slowly started to journey. Then I started searching for jobs. Took up small little jobs. A long story. But every stage, God protected me. But from then on, I kept Him first.
Wonderful.
I always kept Him first. And irrespective of how much ever tough it was, I was in a traveling job. Money was needed. They had to pay off this debt. All of this stuff. But every stage, and there were family members who supported me. Later on, I got married, and my wife stood by me in all of this. And then God takes me to that highest level. And there was a purpose there, so that He probably could remunerate me so much that when He calls me, He says, I've given up you enough. At least looking at that, now you come out and serve me fully. Kind of a thing. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
There are a lot of breakings.
Friends, the same Peter Samuel who was on the verge of suicide, in February 2018, he reached the pinnacle of corporate success when he was named the CEO of the country head of Berkadia. And not only was it the CEO, but he had built a most meaningful ministry that had touched several lives. The reason I'm wrapping up this way is we do have hope. And we do have hope, especially when you meet the right person, the giver of life, the person of Jesus Christ, who met him on that fateful day of tragedy when he wanted to make it even more tragic and end his life. And a turning point happened. There's hope for each one of us. And thank you very much, Peter Samuel, for your story. And Santhosh for giving us the insights into that. Thank you very much.
you.
God bless you all.